Thank you, everyone, all to the panelists who are here with me, and also thank you to everyone who's joining in. We'll get started. People will probably continue. I see there's 53 participants now. People will keep dripping in, but we're gonna, at least on our part, we'll be able to say that we started on time. Awesome. So thank you to everyone who is joining us today. For anyone who doesn't know what event they joined, this is the Ask Me Anything session run by XTech Showcase. We're very, very excited to have both our guest speaker today, Art Trevethan, Director of Corporate Ventures at Army Applications Laboratory, as well as our honorary moderator from here in Israel, Matthew Cloud, Director of Business Development at Eagle Point Funding. This is very exciting for us. We do many different things, and I'll give a brief introduction in a second about XTech Showcase, but this is one of a series that we are just launching, and this is the first one. So we're very excited to have everyone with us, and we're excited to get started. So a bit about XTech Showcase. We do many different things, but we're going to stay focused on this event. I will say that our vision as a large ecosystem and network is bringing more innovative technologies to market by leveraging the power of community. So what does our community consist of? Because as I said, we are a very active ecosystem. We've created a ecosystem for deep tech startups creating the newest innovation, trying to push their technologies forward, corporate and government stakeholders who are looking to find solutions for their organization's needs, or finding the new technologies of tomorrow, as well as investors who are looking for deal flow, and also finding a way to make strategic investment and pushing all this in an effort to kind of push technology forward. And sessions like these are just one example of things that we do to not only bring these different partners together and the different sides of the market together, but also really to help educate the public, whether that is on the organizational agency side. So for example, today we have Art, who's going to talk to us about Army Applications Laboratory. Next few events, we're going to have other representatives coming and talking about their agencies, the inner workings, and we're going to go over the kind of the key questions that many founders, I think, have today of, what do I need to do to get my technology commercialized, or how can I better my positioning to be useful to agencies like Army Applications Laboratory? So our next Ask Me Anything that's coming up on the horizon is going to be November 15th with Matt McGregor from U.S. Air Force and Mitra Corp. And our next showcase event, we host a separate event every month, a little larger, which is more of a pitch event for new technologies, which Art is very familiar with as well, obviously. The next one up is the Space Showcase. All this information throughout the event, we'll be posting it in the comments and stuff like that and in the chat. But people are welcome to visit our website, sign up, register. It's open to the public, anyone who wants to learn. And if you're interested in more than learning and participating, whether as a panelist or as a pitching company, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we're happy to have a conversation and learn more about what you guys are doing. Today's agenda, just so we are all on the same page and you know what to expect. We're gonna be running till 2 p.m. Eastern. Introductions is what we're doing right now. After I finish talking and pass the mic to Matthew, he'll be going over a little bit about Eagle Point Funding, our partners for this event. And then we're gonna go to the main event, which is the AAL presentation by Art, which will be followed by a live discussion with Matthew Cloud, the moderator, and Art Trevethan, our guest speaker. We're gonna go over a few things that we think are important and we think are useful for people to kind of learn more about. And then afterwards, we're gonna open it up to an open Q&A with the audience. Throughout the entire event, you are welcome to post your questions as they come up in the Q&A on Zoom. You can do it in the chat as well, but we might miss it because that kind of disappears. So I recommend anyone who has a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. And then afterwards, what we'll be doing is we'll be choosing key questions from the Q&A, and we'll ask them on your behalf. So don't be shy. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Matthew.
Thanks, Yuval. Yeah, I'm going to make this quick because, you're all here to listen to Art speak about how the Army Applications Lab engages with small business. But just as a quick introduction, those of you who are not familiar with federal funding at all, I very highly recommend to book a call with us. You can do so by scanning that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. We can discuss with you, a little bit about your technology, a little bit about federal funding in general. I'm going to give you a 2-minute overview. At 30,000 feet, we can say that the United States government spends non-dilutive capital on private sector engagement to assist small business tech companies with supplemental funding for their ongoing research and development. At Eagle Point Funding, we help you get it. We help you draft your applications. We help you identify opportunities. We introduce you to lovely people like our stakeholders from our Deep Tech Showcase or our Ask Me Anything representatives. And so the idea is that we at Eagle Point Funding function as that middle ground between U.S. government and small business tech companies. So this pie chart here represents the annual breakdown that 11 of the U.S. federal agencies utilize in order to disseminate their research and development appropriations. There are 3 types of funding that we like to say. There's what we call phased funding, which is predominantly distributed through the Small Business Innovation Research Fund and the Small Business Technology Transfer that just got a reauthorization at the end of September. So lots of exciting stuff there. I'll be giving a private webinar on that as well on Thursday. If you'd like to join, you certainly can shoot me an email. I'll get you a link. Sorry, can't do 2 things at once. So I just put my email address in the chat for you. Then we do have what we call continuous funding mechanisms, which are distributed through the broad agency announcement. And then you have directed procurement like the IDIQ or the OTA, which is utilized to help you move faster into commercialization with U.S. federal agencies that are deployment-based. You can move on, Yuval. Great. So a little bit about us. We got started in 1999 in Israel, and we moved into contracting with U.S.-based companies and U.S. governments in 2001. And to date, we are the largest grant consultancy firm in the world. We have 3 sister companies. We at Eagle Point Funding work with all technologies outside of medical or life sciences. And then we do have our life sciences division, which is called the FreeMind Consultants. And then the original mother company that was started in 1999 evolved into what is now Argentum Consultants today. They work with all EU countries. And so, yes, we're, like I said, we have a very deeply rooted reputation. Go ahead, Yuval. Great. So when you work with us, this is an example, and these slides will be sent to you, but this is an example of how we work with our clients. From onboarding you, and you will be introduced to your grant consultant, who will be an ongoing point of contact for you and an ongoing part of your company when it comes to submitting applications. They will identify opportunities to you and present them to you. And then we will spearhead the submission process. As you can see, it is not a simple task, but we function as your supreme project management team, collecting the information necessary and translating it into proposal format, and then handling the submission portals for you, because as I'm sure Art is aware, they tend to crash 24 hours before the deadline. So we navigate all of this for you, really, so that you can prioritize the research and development that's so important. That you guys do what you're good at. You pay us to do what we're good at. That's pretty much how it works. And now I would like to. I think we're ready. Yeah, here's my contact info. That's
and your beautiful face.
Yeah, and you know what? I still look like that from like 10 years ago.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And yeah, Art, I think we're gonna stop talking on our end, and we're gonna let you share your slides. Tell me if you have any issues sharing.
No problem. Let me go ahead and go into screen share here, and awesome. Give me just a second to get that rolling, because I did have something else that I wanted to share as well.
Perfect. And I'll remind everyone who's on, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the event, until we start answering questions from there, just type it in there and we'll get back to it at the end.
Matthew, can you see the full, is it full screen?
Yes.
What you're seeing? Okay, yeah, great. So what is AAL? AAL is Army Applications Laboratory. We are a direct response unit to Army Futures Command. We are actually a division of the U.S. Army, specifically focused on the modernization efforts of Army Futures Command. So we support that mission by getting companies and getting technologies to an MVP level, and bring them to the point where the labs can transfer them. So we're involved in funding that is specifically earmarked as research and development. So we're not going to the local sporting goods store or to the Radio Shack or what have you and buying a thing off the shelf and saying, okay, this solves the problem. Even if we identify that. If we identify that, we'll just tell them, okay, you just need to go through procurement. We are not a procurement shop. We are a research and development shop where we take and we help the companies move through the gates to work with the government. We steer our investments in that direction. To the slide that Matthew had up earlier, yeah, a lot of what we do is SBIR. And it's a small business innovation research. It has certain restrictions upon it as far as who qualifies for that. But we also have access to other funding mechanisms for our projects, depending upon who's going to be using it, how much it's going to cost, and who the solvers are. But we very much promote the best practices. This is kind of the secret sauce, is that there is a team in Austin, Texas of Army Applications Lab. It's made up of about 35 people. The Army has more problems than we could possibly address in the next 10 to 15 years. As Army Applications Lab, 35 people can't do it all. But what we can do is develop innovative best practices that we then promote to the rest of the Army, DoD innovation organizations and development organizations to try and make the path easier. The US government in specific, but all governments, quite frankly, have a lot of rules around them. How do you navigate those? How do you move through? That's why you contact a firm like Eagle Point to help you get through those hurdles. We actually try and reduce the barriers. So with our kind of four main focuses, we certainly support the core objectives of modernization. We do bring the warfighters in early to work on their problems. We're usually working on like a 3-year horizon. And we want to transition those into acquisition units or other opportunities for continued business development and evolve the process of how do you work with the government. So doing that integrated solution development, we develop and transition things out to the Army. We don't want to end one of our projects without giving some unit a widget or a physical item or even a software item. One of our unique abilities is our ability to inform and add language to requirements, so that if you are developing a navigation system, the navigation system itself is probably not going to be in the requirements. It'll say there's not going to be a requirement that's only for navigation system, I should say. There's going to be a requirement for a guided device that has a navigation system, right? So by our ability to inform those requirements on those larger systems of record, we can actually create a path around what's called the Valley of Death, which is the point at which funding stalls. So we create other avenues and make introductions to larger players, to people who are already in the government, to create those opportunities for people to take their small company and grow into something larger. Part of the way that we do this is in the beginning, before we have committed to take on a project, before we make a project public, we actually talk with the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. That's the person with the problem, the person with the contract, and the person with the money. So we make sure that we have a flow through. So we're not requiring you to find a stakeholder. We've got the stakeholders up front. We do have a network of warfighters and of organizations across the Army that we create an opportunity for solvers to physically experience the problem. We create an opportunity for solvers to experience, whether that's in the cab of 777, whether that's in the lab, whether that's in a communication simulator, to know what the problem is, which allows them to solve it better, right? Because if you don't reveal, if you're not transparent about what the problem is, it's very difficult to solve it. We are bringing private investors to the table. We are bringing in the groups like Eagle Point. We're bringing in accelerators and otherwise to try and build the ecosystem that allows companies to work with us better as we go down the road and build those best practices. So essentially, we identify the pain points by talking to soldiers, identify who the people are who are going to carry it through. Those would be the pathways to identify solutions, accelerate the development, and create multiple off-ramps. A lot of people tend to think that the only way to gain government business is to become a program of record. And I would postulate and actually state that that is not the case. That is one way of multiple for getting through to transition. And I would say the transition is also not just to government. If you go through, when we talk about the successes that the military and the government has had over time, these are all things that have enhanced our lives. GPS, aluminum foil, Tang, you can go way back to the space race, right? All of these things have been developed with government dollars and found a home and found a place to build their business, whether it be a mix of government and commercial, commercial only, government only. AEL tends to focus on a couple of main areas. First of all is tactical power and energy. This is energy both at the edge, where the soldier is in the field needing to recharge the 30 objects that they carry. It's also energy for tactical elements, energy at the base level, all of the intelligence that it takes to run that. We also look at unmanned systems from an AI perspective. How do we get that information to the edge, help the soldiers in the field? We've got a good focus on human performance and readiness, and I'm going to talk about that real quick in just a minute. But that is, quite frankly, the best item we have on the battlefield is the two-legged kind. So we want to make sure that they are ready to move out and that we're not creating elements in the way. We're moving into contested logistics, and then we keep some dry powder for something that starts to succeed. These are what we call emerging opportunities. We can throw more dollars at them, more elements. As I stated earlier, we do work with various units across the force. This is just a brief example of some of these. We also have a soldier innovation network where the soldiers are actually feeding problems into us and allows us direct connection to these groups to help them in the innovation process and for them to help us. Not only do we work with our force, but we also, there's some unique things in Austin, right here in our building, Defense Innovation Network, software factories right down the street. AFWorks is less than 100 feet from me where I'm sitting right now. Ensign's got representation, TMD, special US SOCOM. Outside of those, we also work with every other agency that's out there that's doing innovation. So we're maintaining a clear view. Quite frankly, if you come to us with something, even if we're not working on it, we may know someone who is and can point people in the right direction very often. In the next 2 years, we expect to transition 34 projects. These are projects that have gotten to a technology readiness level of 6 or better. We've done more than 32 touch points over the last 12 months. We tend to put on about 12 projects a year. This is, when I talk about putting together the community of action, this planning and preparation that you see in the upper left hand is really the most important. We're taking a look at the marketplace. We're taking a look at the people who participate in it to identify who our solvers are, who are our carrying agents within the government, and how do we move forward. We then tend to move to a pre-selection where we're open, we're having conversations with individual stakeholders, with the solvers through technical point of contact calls, through webinars and otherwise, to make people informed of what all is happening, doing a lot of work on social media. Then moves into solicitation. We do a down select, contract, period of performance. You're going to see some numbers on there that honestly are pretty incredible. From the close of solicitation to the down select in a typical Army contract is around 200 days. We do it in 15. When you look at the period to get to an actual payment, we're usually about 45 days after that, which is really incredible, and it really speeds the process and allows non-traditional companies to participate better because you've got a faster path to actual performance.
And everybody, I just want to hammer in on that. Let's zone in on that because that's actually a huge deal, Art.
Yeah.
You know, the most SBIR agencies, it's a 5-month time till your notification of award, and then they take another month for contracting, and then they'll distribute funds a month later. So taking that down to, you said 15 days.
Yes.
That's, I mean, there's no agency, there's no other agency or sub-agency within the U.S. government that does that. So that's, you know, it's a big deal.
And I do want to hammer, the reason that we are able to do that, Matthew, and for the rest of the team here, is because we do that planning and preparation to put together the community of action. Because to really, again, probably more important than the time frame is the fact that on day one of the pre-solicitation, we have already gathered the people with the contracts and the people with the money who have committed that if we find the solution, they're going to carry it through to a phase 2 or a phase 3 or on through the process. if you think about a lot of the other funding mechanisms and organizations participating in either SBIR or RDT&E or in OTs, part of your effort in that first process is to decipher and navigate the bureaucracy to find someone who's going to carry you into the next phase. And quite frankly, that a lot of times is where companies fail, because they've done some great science, they've done some great development, but it was a science experiment. And there was no thrust to carry it beyond the science experiment. We make sure that we've got that commitment on day one so that you don't have to navigate the infrastructure of the US Army to try and find somebody who's going to carry you across the finish line. They're already there if the solution is right.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I had a conversation about a month and a half ago or something like that now with a program director for SOCOM, who was telling me that his biggest problem is moving a company from a phase 2 to a phase 3 because the appropriation request has to be made 24 months in advance. And then there's at least a 12-month bridge between the end of the phase 2 and when they could potentially acquire the technology and implement it in a phase 3. And so he said there's got to be, I mean, this was before the reauthorization, but
Yep.
But it sounds like AAL doesn't have that problem because the process is so ingrained with intermingling with the actual end user who has appropriated funds, who says, hey, this is exactly the technology that I need.
Right. Now, it is a resource intensive process. That's why we only take on like 12 projects a year. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And it does still take time to get through those, but through working with the venture capital community, the investment community, as well as working with our embedded, let's call them advisors or that community of action, it allows us to do more. Now, my next slide here, this is one of the things that I was just going to talk about. Investors are actually an important part of this, because a lot of times when you look at different phases of a project, there are opportunities for government investment into a project that kind of rely on outside funding, right? That outside funding comes in and they'll match it, or they'll match it 2 times outside funding to 1 time inside, or reverse, depending upon the particular program. So one of the things that we will do in order to facilitate some of that is we have a strong network in the investment community. We actually put out a monthly newsletter. Hey, who's coming up on the next phase? Who do we have great interest in it? Who's got traction? So that opportunity, we can't tell somebody to invest in something. We're the government, right? There are restrictions on what we can do, but making the connections available, quite frankly, is a ridiculously strong profile for us, in that we do tell our investors, hey, this company's doing great things for us, and we think they're going to move forward. The investor gets in touch with them. You start looking at things like a phase 3 that has a co-investment pejorative to it, and it makes it possible, right? So making those connections and making that capability. One of the things that I'm looking at right now with the reauthorization, there are additional points being put on people who partner, right, with existing government contractors, with other large companies. How do we facilitate that? We've been making connections in that world for a while. We're starting to take credit for them in terms of making sure that we've got people who can come through. With that, I'm going to switch which screen that I'm sharing, because that's kind of the end of my presentation, but there's something else that's really important. Army Futures Command uses AAL to help them understand the broader community. And one of the things that happens in the labs, they become very inward focusing. So in order to create a larger outward focus and to gain the education, about 6 months ago, we put on the first Vertex event, which was around energy and electrification, where we brought in industry stalwarts and new companies to speak and to tell us what's coming down the pike. This is not like pitch contest. This is not pitch your product. This is tell the Army what's happening in your field so that we can better plan for and develop those projects that are going to be important in 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20, what have you. The next event is coming up December 7th and 8th, and it's squarely focused on human performance optimization. Human performance, yeah, it's wearables, but it's also how do we use that data to better gauge. It's not how many push-ups you can do, it's what does the mental health look like. It's looking at the 5 pillars of performance, which is physical, nutrition, sleep, emotional, and spiritual, and being able to make sure that our soldiers are ready for the next conflict should it come. These are exclusive events. We do ask people, if you go to this site, actually, if you look up Army Vertex on Google, this will come up. It's located at armyfuturescommand.com/Vertex. Anybody who's in that human performance world, I encourage you to request an invite, and we will review those and move forward and let people know who is invited. We have some A-list speakers who are unannounced as of yet, but let's just say somebody very strong from Apple is liable to be one of our keynotes, as well as strong discussion periods in those 2 days to inform the Army. This is not the Army talking to the community and saying, this is what we want. This is the community talking to the Army and saying, this is what you should be looking at because this is coming up.
Thanks for that, Art. So I think now would be a good time to hammer through some of these questions here.
Yes, sir.
And one that is weighing on my mind as well is it was the first one asked by one of our participants here, is with regard to the new reauthorization bill for the SBIR. Mandates that every sub-agency within the DoD is going to be required to have an open topic, at least one open topic solicitation per year. So being that the Army Applications Lab, your process is so streamlined because you've pre-identified the specific technologies that you're looking for, and those are ready. That's how you guys can award in 15 days. Is that you've got the end user, you've got the appropriations, you've got the technology. Now we found the company, now let's fund it. So how are you guys going to the Army itself has to do this, but I don't think AAL has to do this. Will AAL have an open topic, or will you guys leave that to XTech Search or something like that?
To be quite frank, I don't know yet.
Okay.
This reauthorization is fairly new. There are a number of factors within it, including the open topic, that we are currently awaiting some legal opinions on as far as what we are required to do and how that impacts our business model. Honestly, if it's just one a year, I don't think it impacts us overall as far as that goes. But there are other things in that reauthorization, as far as specifically some of the foreign influence elements that we were already looking at, but it makes it more of an environment that we need to pay attention to. The foreign investments, how many SBIRs have you done before? And granted, this affects SBIR. So put these aside if you're talking OTA or if you're talking RDT&E dollars, but in the realm of SBIR, we're required to pay more attention now to how many SBIRs have you done in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, in the last 15 years, right? And that will create a system where it's kind of designed to create a negative influence around what we call SBIR farms, which are the people who will do 100 SBIRs in a year because they're really good at writing proposals. And that tends to block out some of the people who could be really good solvers, but not as good at writers, right? That tends to block out some of the access to funds because somebody has figured out the keys to what makes a proposal stand out as opposed to a technology stand out. So we are currently reviewing these elements and expect to have some legal guidance soon that will make adjustments, but the crux of our program is not going to change significantly. It will add some additional tasks. It will add some additional elements, perhaps in terms of information that we collect and how we evaluate. But our goal here is to maintain a rapid process that provides transparency and access to capital to solve Army problems.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think that's it's a good answer. I think just sort of a follow-up question that I have, and it just came to mind is really how often do you award the same business for subsequent SBIRs? I mean, do you know? I mean, yeah, ballpark. I know you can't like exactly know, but
it's not an exact, right? Because there are some really good engineering companies who have, I would say, have gotten money from us twice. I don't think there's anybody who's hit 3 or more in the 3 years, but it's also kind of a loaded question. The boss here tends to say there's no such thing as a new SBIR applicant. Many times, well, especially in engineering firms, right?
Yeah.
2 guys from 2 separate engineering firms liked working together. They were both working on other SBIRs. They get together and form a new engineering firm that then applies for SBIRs, but has a 0 count, right? But they've been involved in the process in the past. That's not a bad thing, right? Because you've got a new firm, you've got somebody who's bringing some new thinking. But we don't go back to the well purposefully. We're purposefully trying to distribute fairly the funds that we have from that program to ensure that there's opportunity created for all.
Right. And and really, you speak about this like it's like all about the company, but the bottom line is that this is about the Army. And it's about creating deal flow for the Army. And the more companies that you guys are engaging with, the more companies you can engage with, right? Because you do, once you win one SBIR phase 1, you check off those boxes on the Defense Procurement Act, and now you can start contracting. So like this is it's a contracting play. And it's bilateral. And it's interesting. So a part of the new reauthorization bill is that every year for the first 3 years, the Comptroller General for the United States they'll have to submit to Congress, the number of awards to first-time applicants, the number of awards to, conversions from phase 1s to phase 2s to phase 3s, all of these things. And so, I'm really excited about the reauthorization bill personally, because I think that it's the program was in great need of overhaul. So even though you guys took it upon yourselves to work within the lines and make it effective,
we were doing some of the things that they're looking for in this because we saw them as being unfair elements. Because if you go out, first of all, one of the hard things is the government tracks purchases over a certain threshold, doesn't tend to track as with this fine of detail, who got the $100,000 SBIR award, because quite frankly, it's pocket change, right? And I hate to say that as somebody who pays taxes, but it's the reality is that, there are certain things that fall below the threshold of notice. And I am strongly in favor of knowing who has done all these SBIRs, because there are shops out there that do SBIR ones all day long, get the awards, and never produce anything, and we don't want to work with them.
Of course. Right. I mean, it's a very, I mean, that was actually Rand Paul's big problem was that, and then furthermore, then if they go commercialize, they can commercialize in China, and there's nothing stopping them from doing it. And so that's why these provisions are being put in place. But so, let's jump into some of these other questions here. I know
Sure.
we have a few of them. But do you guys have does AAL have any connection with the XTech Search program? Because currently that's set up as being a pseudo open topic forum.
Yeah.
So do you guys ever bring your priorities to XTech Search or take some of the companies that were funded through XTech Search to come and solve AAL problems?
There's a little bit of a back and forth, and it's kind of based upon some personal relationship. We have a good relationship with XTech. They are absolutely doing some good work. It tends to be, when they start, tends to be a little bit lower TRL than what we're looking for, and that's technology readiness level. So the companies that come out of XTech tend to be kind of ready for the AAL approach to solving problems. Because they work on that kind of pseudo open environment, not everything's within our realm at that point in time, but we do have companies on contract who have been through XTech, developed their technology through that to get it to the level where it's ready to come in and address some problems. Could that use more coordination in the future? Absolutely. And we are working on that to be better coordinated and feed them the problem sets that we are working on. There's some disconnect there because sometimes we don't know the problem sets that we're going to be working on, other than in generality previous to the time frame that they require to get through. But anytime that we can coordinate those schedules, we are doing so.
Awesome. And just for those of you who don't know what TRL means, it means technology readiness level. Here's a nice chart that, from NASA, so you guys can take a look at it while we're going through questions.
And by the way, if I speak in any acronyms, you are allowed to slap me and to say, what do those letters mean?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we've been talking about SBIRs and SBIRs and SBIRs and SBIRs. And so, for those of you who don't know, that's the Small Business Innovation Research Fund. It is, it's been a very hot topic in the news. It's the best way for a small business tech company in the United States to begin engaging with the U.S. government.
Yes.
And, if you want to learn more about it, totally email me, call me, text me, come to my webinars. We have, I'm doing like I said, I'm doing a big SBIR webinar on Thursday. So this is actually a really great question though, Art. As a US company, do we need security clearance to bid on AAL projects, or does it depend on the project?
Yes. It depends. Yes, in that it depends upon the project. 99.9% of our projects, the initial bidding process is not security gated at all, right? And even if it is, we'll put it in terms of cows in a field as opposed to bodies in the desert. We will ensure that it is an unclassed problem before we take it out public. You can apply. That does not mean that as it moves to a phase 2 or as it moves to later stages of investment, that you may be required to obtain classification if the problem evolves in that way. And a lot of times in the government, a problem will start out unclassed, but then 6 months into it, all of a sudden you hit the classification level. It just means jumping through a couple hoops as far as security clearances. And I think Matthew froze. He hasn't moved on screen for a moment or two.
He's either extremely intensely, listening,
Staring
or
at
he's froze for a little bit, but that's all right. Thank you for the answer. Anyway, he'll hop on in a second. So we'll keep moving through the questions. We have a little bit of time left. So are cyber power or processing solutions more attractive at the moment?
So if you look at what we have as far as our areas of interest, power, absolutely an area of interest, and we do have projects that are upcoming in that field. In terms of cyber and compute, as it applies to AI ML, yes. As it applies to cybersecurity and to hacking, there are other groups who are actually working on those problems directly. It's not within our particular realm.
Okay, that's good to know. So we have another question, a little different, from Edmund Hennessy. As a guideline, can ART outline a technology project or consideration that did not fit AAL's initiative that would help the audience gain an insight to what will not fit into the AAL framework? I think that's a pretty good one.
So as a project that is submitted by an existing Army organization that says we want to buy a razor, let's say SOCOM wants to get the latest and greatest razor, that would not be the place that we fit. If somebody comes to us and says, we need a new cannon system, that's not going to fit. We tend to look at things in terms of it takes us between now and 3 years from now to deliver a product. Those items that you would look at as being invested systems of record, like tanks, big munitions, and those kind of things, are really not going to fall in our place. Now, that being said, the guidance system on it may very well be. Some sort of a loading mechanism may very well be. The boss here likes to say, we make things better. So we will take and create additions to those systems. On the flip side, from things that have been presented to us, honestly, there's not a whole lot that we can't do. I would say cyber is one of them. Cybersecurity is one of those that we don't get into. We try not to breach into medical, although there are some training solutions and medical adjacent things in the human performance world that we do look at. But if you come to me with a new surgical tool that's going to break the skin, I'm sorry, I'm not dealing with the FDA. That's not in our mission set.
Got it. Okay. And I will say that just to your credit, your website is very clear. If you're talking about streamlining things, I think for anyone who is on with minimal understanding of AAL, I think a great way, other than this event, which is way better, but just going through the website, you can really see all the topics and subtopics that are kind of in your wheelhouse. If there's something that is changing, or then correct me, but just for my recollection, I think that's also just a good place to start for anyone who's trying to determine the relevancy.
Hey, I wanted to address, I see the questions as well, and somebody submitted one about they requested an invite to the Vertex event. I'm actually on that project. We expect to, within the next 2 weeks, start sending out the approvals for who has been selected to be able to attend the event in Austin. It is a little bit of a process for us because we're trying to make sure that we've got a good dispersion of technologies. And quite frankly, while physical fitness companies are are good, there's a lot of them, and we can't just have it all being physical fitness. So we're trying to make sure that we've got good dispersion across the areas of interest that make up human performance. So I would start expecting something in the next 2 weeks.
And just because there are many founders here, so you were urging people also to still request. Does that mean that the timeline for that is also the next couple of weeks until you start approving, or is it up until later on when the event actually happens?
So if he came back and applied and Steve Jobs wanted to come, I'd make a spot for him. But at a certain point, we're going to cut off because people have to make travel arrangements. It's early December, which is in everybody's holiday seasons. Yeah. We know that this is a difficult time of year. However, it was the best time for us to hold this. And quite frankly, coming to Austin in December means you get to avoid some snow usually.
Yeah.
We've had some freak things happen, but Austin in December tends to be a pretty nice place.
Perfect. Awesome. So there's this one right underneath it. If you want, I can read it. Also regarding Vertex, one of the topics is turning data into insight with systems integration and architecture development. Could you elaborate on how AAL might define mission readiness? Would this relate to skills, gaps, and learning?
So this is actually a great question, and it's something that's been part of our discovery. We currently have a couple projects out on using readiness management systems. Think of these as like large sports teams who track every aspect of a performer's life. Well, the performers in our case are the individual soldiers. One of the things that we found that was I'm going to call it what it is. It's a problem, is that we've actually been gathering this data for quite a long time, and it all sits in separate databases, and none of it talks to each other. So the idea of creating that data fabric that can accurately deliver insights into the capability of a unit based upon previously gathered elements and ongoing gathering. It's more of a data problem than a human performance problem, but the data affects human performance. The data, the interpretation of that data is what allows you to know where you're at with that human performance. So absolutely, that is an important factor in that human performance optimization.
Got it.
And there was actually, sorry guys, my internet cut out, but
no problem.
there was a solicitation for this. Did you guys? I know that you guys had something like this in the last like 2 months. That was exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
It is actually performing right now. We took that's one of our previous solicitations that went out that was talking about a performance management system. And it's being rotated between a couple of different units. We're gathering soldier feedback to determine what the next steps will be on that. Because, like I said, it's a data problem. Sometimes more so. There's some delay. Yes, we could gather new information. We could gather new insights. But if we can't make decisions based upon the insights that we've got right now or the data we've got right now, it doesn't help to add more to the pile. Right. So we are progressing with that. That's been in activity now for, actually it's over 60 days because it just rotated to the third unit. So yes, 100%, that's exactly what that's about, Matthew.
Yeah, did you guys, and while I was gone, did you guys happen to go over, do you guys have your priorities for 2023? Yes, did you guys, I mean, I know we're not at the end of the year yet, but I know that last year, like electrification and human performance and things like this were priorities for funding year 2022. Do you guys have a new set yet?
They remain the priorities. Those were actually informed by what we were told was going to be some of the Army priorities going into 23 and 24. So we are going to stick with those. We have added contested logistics as an element, and I think that you've seen that before, Matthew.
Yeah.
That is going to be starting with the new year. I expect to have some projects out on that probably in the first quarter that will kind of flow along. And that actually brings up the point. We don't have a season. We release projects when they're ready. I'm going to go back to what the old Moldavi thing, we'll sell no wine before it's time. We actually make sure that we've got everything lined up before we release a project. We don't just do them all in January. You can see projects come out from us pretty much each month.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very cool stuff. So Art, I think, one of the big questions now is, okay, great. So all of these, all these 80 some odd participants who are here, how do we get in touch with you? How do we engage?
Sure.
Yeah.
100%. Easiest way, so that it's not directly to me. I mean, I'll give out my email address as well, but if you email CV, that stands for Corporate Ventures, at aal.army, or go to aal.army on the web. There's opportunities to submit for our particular concepts that we're going after. Click on the Get Involved button. It'll show you what's going on right now, if there are any going on right now. We've got a couple that are going to be released here pretty soon that will be stretching period of performances, I believe, to start in January. Those are going to be coming up here real soon as far as hitting the web. We also have a great deal of information on our website, aal.army, where you can go and take a look at those. Plus, the Corporate Ventures team will answer any of your questions. I'm highly visible on LinkedIn. So if you just look up Art Trevethan, you'll find me, and more than happy to answer questions and to help people along.
Thank you.
And if you're ever in Austin, just let me know and come on up to the Army Applications Lab.
Yeah, well, in the Capital Factory, it's like you're just bombarded with all these awesome things. So by the time we get to the AAL, it's
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's if you haven't done it yet, definitely Capital Factory, they're another one of our strategic partners. We all like to, we're all in this together. That's kind of the way we see things. So yeah,
absolutely.
Art, thank you so very much for coming on and answering questions for us. I got a question about how do I join your I got a question in the chat about how you guys will join my webinar that I'm going to give on Thursday. I'll pop a link in the chat for you guys. But Art, I think if nobody has anything else, I think that's what we got for you today.
There's definitely more, but that's all we got for today. Yeah. And thank you again, Art, from both the Eagle Point and Deep Tech Showcase side. We appreciate the time and the transparency and the willingness to join and educate the public on all things AAL and being open to speaking. I think it helps. It's kind of usually ends up being a big win-win for everyone. And I hope that this event will be another one of those. I'll be posting more info below. Yeah, I'll just put contact info, our next events like this, which everyone is welcome to join and come and learn. And that's pretty much it. I'll just leave the chat open for a little bit. But thank you everyone for joining. Thank you also Matthew, and everyone who helped put it together. And that's pretty much it.
And I just put some things up in the chat so that people can contact me or find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
We're all good and welcome for that. Thank you all very much. I've got to jump to my next thing. I appreciate all your time. It's been absolutely wonderful. And we look forward to future participation.
Awesome.
Thanks
Looking
again,
forward to
Art.
it as well.
Thanks all.